How to love yourself unconditionally. Welcome, everyone. And that's the topic we'll be speaking about, which, as I've been saying in the past few months, these are topics that are actually being generated and suggested and requested by people everywhere. So if there's any topic that you would like me to address, please don't hesitate to just share that with us by either sending us an email or posting something on Facebook and or YouTube. All the channels are open to you. So how to love yourself unconditionally. And this, of course, is based on a key principle, and that is that it is this is inherent to the human being, the idea of self-love. In using the Talmudic expression, which goes back thousands of years and has a profound understanding of human nature, is that Avos Atzmai, which is the Hebrew expression of self-love, is something that every person has. That's how we're created. And as a result of that, as we were discussing, there are great strengths in that, and there are also liabilities possible in regard to that. So if that's indeed the case, that each of us inherently has self-love, which is why we were created, God created us in a way that we should protect ourselves. We should understand our needs. Because if a person had no sensitivity to themselves, they didn't have any self-love, they can actually be prone and vulnerable to all kinds of danger. So there's a concept called in Hebrew, it's called, you shall live by these precepts. You shall live, you shall chayecha koidmi, your life comes first. So if a person is not self-loving, doesn't have any self-respect and self-esteem, they actually compromise this creation that God created, which is the human being in the divine image. So then the obvious question is, since the self-love is such an important, is inherent and so important component in our lives, why is it that there are some people that dislike themselves? Very big, basic question, fundamental question. I hope there's no one listening here that dislikes themselves, but as statistics show, people in this world, many people do not like themselves, definitely don't love themselves. On the other hand is the question, since there's the positive side of self-love, is there also a negative side to self-love? For example, self-love can manifest itself in arrogance, in selfishness, in narcissism, because you're so self-consumed that it's all about me. And how do you distinguish that from a healthy self-love, which manifests itself in self-esteem and self-confidence, which is a very different side of this end of the spectrum? And how do you create a balance in your life of having a healthy measure of self-love and self-confidence, while also balancing it with humility, with selflessness, with commitment to others? Because as we know, that love is not just about yourself, there's also loving others, which leads to another question. Can you really love someone if you don't love yourself? Now these are just the tip of the iceberg, but these touch upon fundamental questions that affect us all in literally virtually every aspect of our lives and the decisions we make. And frankly, there's a lot of confusion around this, but that shouldn't surprise us. And we live in a world where unfortunately many of us is a lot lacking in the area of role models, healthy role models that showed us what healthy love is like. So if you had parents that were healthy and their love was healthy, obviously that gives you a big head start. But in many cases, we have not had such role modeling. So it's obvious that we will be confused when it comes to these matters because we don't have a standard of what do you look up to? What is considered healthy love? What's considered unhealthy love? Where does, as I say, love spill over into selfishness? Where is love balanced with humility? Repeating what I said before. So all this is a critical topic which affects, as I said, literally everything in our lives. And that's what we'll be speaking about. And let's begin with the beginning, and that is the human being and what we're made of. What we're made of. So based on the principles that I've spoken about many times in this class, literally I would say almost every week, is that a human being is a soul within a body. We define ourselves often by our bodies, by our looks, by our youth, by our vigor, by our accomplishments, by our class status, how others look at us. But in truth, your real value lies in the fact that you have as a given birthright. Your birthright is that you are a soul, a divine soul. And that simply means that you're not just a negligible or arbitrary entity in this world, but you have an indispensable element to you. In the words of the Bible, yes, created in the divine image. Now that's not meant necessarily as a religious statement, it's meant to state the value of what a human being and what human life is about. So it all begins with what we value, how valuable it is. Unfortunately, I find that even though people don't say it outright, life is very devalued by many people in their own eyes, their own lives and other people's lives as well. I don't know if you remember this back in, when was it? Years ago in Colorado. What city was it? Was it with the killings? The students went and turned on their own friends and they did a killing spree, and then they killed themselves. It was in Colorado. I forgot the city name so long ago. Do you remember the story? Columbine? 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 It could be. Maybe. Anyway, it was a shocking thing because these were not troubled kids that did it. One morning or one day they came to school with firearms and they just turned on their friends, shot many, murdered many, then killed themselves. And everybody was shocked. Until this day, it still remains a question. Why did they do it? Were they angry? It wasn't angry. It wasn't vengeance. It was like a what do they call, what do they call, a fun spree? That's a word for it, like, huh? No, like they did it just simply out of like fun or something, just to have fun, entertain themselves. It was like going to a shooting range and just. At that time, I remember I traveled to Sydney, Australia, a little while afterwards, and I spoke to a school there called Mariah. There was to teenagers, and I shared with them. I said, "You all know the story that happened in Columbine. I think it was, or maybe it wasn't. I can't remember, Colorado, maybe. No, Columbine, I think, was in West Virginia, maybe. No, Boulder. I was in Boulder. It wasn't in Boulder. Okay, doesn't matter. It'll come to me." And I asked the teenager, "Do you think something like this could happen here in this school? God forbid." And so, some of them said, "Yes." I thought they would say, "We're in Australia, this is American violence, they watch television." And then, in a very personal and intimate setting, many of the students I asked, like, why do you think something like that could happen? We're talking about normal kids. We're not talking about someone that's mentally disturbed, or as I said, somewhat angry, or in their mind feeling they need vengeance, or something like that. We're talking about also teenagers, not someone that has like some social misfit. We're talking about the kids, basically. And the interesting thing that came out of it, without going through the whole details, it was a few people said it, but most did not. I said, is it possible that when you don't value your own life that much, you don't value other lives that much? In a sad and tragic way, living in a world of 7 billion people, with technology, with industrialization, with mass production, where people are seen in terms of like a statistic or as a group, there's a certain devaluation that takes place of human life. So with all our advancements, you think about it, when you lived in a small town and you knew the people that you were born and died in the same town and knew the same people 100, 200 years, for 100, 200 people through your lifetime, there was everyone knew each other by name. There was a personal side to it. Today there's the rush hour. You can walk in a street with thousands and thousands of people. You can sit in a stadium with 60, 70,000 people and everybody's cheering, but afterwards everybody goes back home alone. You could have Facebook, you could have thousands of friends, and are they really friends? There's a certain existential loneliness that it always exists, but especially in our times, and that's called devaluing, a devaluing of life. And as such, it makes sense, sadly, that when you don't value your life so much, you're obviously going to value other lives that much. So it wasn't about people who just were selfish, taking care of themselves. They went and they killed themselves at that. This is just, of course, an extreme example, but my point I want to make is that the heart of the whole issue is all about value, the value of life, and starting with the value of your own life. Now, interestingly, the founding fathers of this country, the United States, recognized this. What I just described earlier from the Bible, everyone created a divine image, that each of us has that absolute indispensable value. They actually etched it into the Declaration of Independence. The foundation of the Declaration of Independence, which is the foundation of the Bill of Rights, of all human rights and freedoms, is the fact that all men are created equal. I hope they meant by men, they meant all people are created equal. And that by virtue of that fact, we all were endowed by the Creator with inalienable rights. These are words from the Declaration of Independence. Inalienable rights, which means nobody can ever take away these rights because they came to us from the Creator. And as such, since no one created us, the Creator gave us these rights and no one can take these rights. So you see how that becomes a foundation of a country with the rights that we have here. It's already several hundred years that it stands, and so many other countries have emulated this principle. I'm not getting into whether it's always implemented, or everyone lives up to it, and whether this country is perfect. Obviously not. But this element is extremely admirable because they took essentially a principle straight from the Bible and turned it into an institution called a government, where this gives the rights and against discrimination, whether based on religion or on creed or on faith or on any other things that color, etc., etc. So this is a foundational element that describes the essential value of the human being. And that's where it all comes from. So if a person who comes into this world, inherently has that sense that they were created in the divine image and have that indispensable element to them, or in the words of the Declaration, inalienable rights, obviously that leads immediately to a very healthy form of self-love and self-respect and self-esteem and self-confidence, all stemming from one key thing, that you have inherent value, period. Or a favorite expression that I like to repeat, and I use it in Torah Meaning for Life, birth is God saying you matter, that you fundamentally and essentially matter. And not just matter to a few people who love you and a few people in your community or in your group or family, but you matter to all of existence on a cosmic level, and that your life and your choices and everything you do changes the scheme of everything. Now you could say, one little individual among 7 billion people? That shouldn't even be a question today because we know size doesn't count and numbers don't matter. You have 75 trillion cells in your body, that's more than 7 billion. And yet one mutant cell can wreak havoc in the worst possible way. You could have a computer program with millions of lines of code and add one dot or take away one dot and it won't work or could even be destructive. And the same is on the DNA level, on a subatomic level. We see today the power, nuclear power. Tremendous amount of power. Where is that power? It's not coming from size or volume. It's coming from the qualitative power of the atom and of the subatomic particles. So it shouldn't surprise anyone that an individual, even though there may be billions of people on Earth, has that type of potency. And that's how we look at a human being. Now imagine that is the mindset. And that's how you enter this world. And everyone you meet constantly affirms and validates that statement. That would create a person who has a very, very healthy sense of self-love. We'll soon talk about the unhealthy, but the healthy sense of it. Because it's not about self-love as opposed not loving anyone else. On the contrary, as I said, if you love your life, you'll love other people's lives. Because you value life. Not because you're important, but because God and the creator of it all endowed us and said, I am giving you a piece of myself, and as a result of all men are created equal, that creation gives us the right to inalienable rights. So it's not because I am selfish, I give it. I give it, if I have it, then you have it. So if I value my life for the right reason, I will value every other life. If you value your life for the wrong reasons, which we shall discuss, that's another story. So that's the most healthy and the natural sense that each of us is born with, this inherent sense of self-awareness, self-respect, and self-esteem. I just read, I'm still researching whether it's actually an accurate number because someone seems to claim that it's urban legend, but I've seen a lot of legitimate articles, including in Psychology Today and others, that say something, a pretty interesting statistic. Toddlers, on average, laugh 400 times a day. Adults, on average, laugh 12 times a day, 14 times a day. 14 to 400. So you have to wonder, like, how did that get from here to here? Now, if that number is actually accurate, it's fascinating. So I'm not shocked by it, because it basically means 400 times a day would mean, if you count their waking hours, let's say the waking hours that children are awake 12 hours a day, a little more. It's pretty fascinating. It's every few minutes, every 2 minutes or something. And adults who sleep less than little toddlers do. Now the answer is very simple, because we get jaded when we're born, and in our early years, we are closer to our natural self. It's like the snow before it's been trampled on. It's freshly fallen snow. It's white. It's pure. It's innocent, as we discussed many times. And the natural nature of a person who's comfortable with themselves in their own skin, and feels, not necessarily they can articulate, but senses that they are valuable because God put them here, is to laugh, is to smile. They have no inhibitions. They have no fears. They don't have to work and react to others. And they don't get so rattled by other people. You'll see children. Yeah, you can rattle them for a second, and they'll say, I'll never talk to you the rest of my life. And then 10 seconds later, they're your best friend. Because children have that resilience, and they have that, I would say even that spunk. They have the flexibility. You even see it. I mean, I remember once I was at a place, and I saw suddenly a child slip and fall down steps, metal steps. And I was terrified. I came running. Child got up and walked away. A doctor was there. They called the doctor. Something must have happened. Maybe there's internal bleeding, something broken. The doctor said, children, their bones have that dexterity. They're extremely flexible. You ever see children can fall asleep on steps? Why don't you try that? Children can play in the snow and they're like oblivious. And for us, it's a whole thing. I got wet, and my feet are wet, and my shirt is wet, Because there's a certain element of flexibility, dexterity, resilience. I'm looking for the right word, like almost an elastic sense, that they're not yet shaped. One of the analogies given for like warm ball of wax. A warm ball of wax can go many different directions. You can shape it, you can define it. Once the wax starts hardening, which is becoming the adult, then the experiences that we have in our lives become hardened. It becomes part of our defined personality. So though children have elements of a personality, but it's still all in an amorphous and type of nebulous state that is still being shaped, and therefore also psychologically, as I said, they're in a healthier state. That's why laughter comes naturally. I know some people that almost can't laugh. And it always traces back, not because they were born that way, because life breaks you. When you grew up in, let's say, in a dysfunctional home, a bitter home, an angry home, and no one laughed, people were very serious and very despondent and so on. And if a child did laugh, the child was ridiculed or dismissed. Well, of course, what do you think that's going to do to a person? That toddler will stop crying, will stop laughing. Maybe I'll write an article about the day we stop laughing, or the way when we slow down laughing. So obviously, a simple exercise would be find things to laugh about. And I don't mean laugh necessarily hysterical laughter. I mean to smile about, to be happy about. And for children, that comes naturally. And you need to do something really serious and consistent to cause them to stop being happy. This is a perfect example of where self-value directly results in a happier life, in a simpler life, in a content, and not one where you're constantly looking over your shoulder and being judged and saying how others are going to look at me and how they're going to criticize or not criticize. That type of... Obviously, I'm painting a pure picture, as pure as possible, because we want to have that standard. And this goes back to what I said earlier about the role modeling. So indeed, both inherently you have that healthy self-love and self-confidence and self-esteem coming based on your essential value. And again, that value is not because you're valuable and no one else is. On the contrary, that value means that everybody's valuable. Think of it like, as I give the analogy often, musical notes. You know your musical note. You know your song that you need to sing. You're very confident in your instrument, in your voice, in your song. So then you also realize that others around you that also have a voice and part of this harmony. And when there comes their turn to sing, you respect that. Not only you respect it, you want it because it complements you. So in musical composition, or if you look at a symphony, you look at an orchestra, what do you see? You see, let's say, hundreds of instruments, hundreds of people. Each one will have their time when they have to play, and some will play. There will be times when they play together, sometimes when one plays one another, but they all understand that when it comes when I have to do my playing, I have to be there completely, and I'm necessary. And they also understand that for me to be complete, I need everyone else to play their song. That's the healthy attitude in love. You love yourself, you understand, you value yourself, and thus you value everything around you. In the words of Hillel, Imena nili mili, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? That means you need to have a healthy sense of self. No one's not over-relying on someone else to save you or someone else to do it for you. But then right away he continues, he says, if I'm only for myself, what am I? And you ask yourself, isn't that a contradiction? If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? And then you say, if I'm only for myself, what am I? No, the answer is very simple. Both are necessary. You need to be for yourself and do what you have to do, and also know at the same time, value the other that has also their contribution to make, and that contribution is important to you. When you look at nature, without human beings getting involved in their free will, it works perfectly that way. Look at the symbiosis between animals. Look how bees feed off the nectar, but then they cross-pollinate flowers. Look how different species work together in this type of harmony, each one doing their role, each one knowing their particular role, and at the same time respecting and complementing the other. If nature is not good enough, look at your own body. Look at your own body. Organs, limbs, systems, cells, and how in a healthy body they all work together in perfect harmony. And each one has its time. You put a piece of food in your mouth. The teeth have their role, the tongue has its role, goes your throat. As it goes down your throat, the digestive process begins. You'll see certain things open as others close. And if something opened when it shouldn't open, it would affect everything else. Everything has its step. It's like an assembly line, a perfect assembly line of hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of steps that all work in such coordination. We take it for granted until, God forbid, we see someone that's struggling with health. We take it for granted. Just think about the circulation of your blood, how that works. Think about the nervous system. Think about the brain, the processing. I mean, it's mind-boggling. It's completely awesome to recognize that this element. The only caveat is when it comes to the human being, we could choose, you know what, I'm not going to play my song, or I don't feel I'm that valuable. And we could also cause others by hurting them, by abusing them, by insulting them, by invalidating them, they start losing confidence. So here's a perfectly healthy, self-loving person with healthy self-esteem, self-confidence, self-respect, with that dignity, and then they're trampled on. And life tramples on them, whether it's parents, whether it's society, there's community, and this begins to wear us down. And what happens is, we don't lose our inherent value. We lose sight of our inherent value. That's the key. We lose sight of it. So we suddenly don't think we're that valuable. We don't think we have that type of, we deserve. Many people say, I don't deserve it. And I ask them, what do you mean you don't deserve it? Why don't you deserve it? Because you see, after a while, so many people have so-called hurt me. And I've been told I feel I don't deserve it. And guilt, and all the other negative feelings that go counter to that healthy sense of inherent value that causes us to have that self-respect. So this leads us now to the other side of things. And this is the fascinating thing. Self-love, the healthy one, is very, very humble, actually. Because as I said before, and this is the key thing, it's not coming self-love because I think I'm important, or I think I have something and I want to dominate over others. I'm more special. It's coming from the fact that you recognize the inherent value that you were given as a gift. So therefore, healthy love will always come with healthy humility and healthy selflessness. It's hand in hand, because it's not a contradiction. The problem is many of us don't realize that because we're not aware of what the so-called healthy version is. So now enter the unhealthy version. What's the unhealthy version? The unhealthy version has nothing to do with your inherent value. It has to do with that you want to compensate perhaps for insecurities and fears. So ironically, it's your lack of self-love that suddenly causes this type of bravado and behavior that can be arrogant, can be selfish, can be narcissistic. So this is a total distortion of what love is. It's a total distortion of what self-love is. It's not really self-love. It's basically, I would argue, that someone that has that doesn't have any self-love. They don't have self-love, so the only way they can be, they have to dominate over others. Very secure people. People who are very comfortable in their own skin, they coexist with anyone. They can hear an opinion that is different than theirs. Basically, you don't have to be wrong for me to be right. Anyone that says that you have to be wrong for me to be right means you're not secure in your position. You need everybody else to agree with you for you to feel right. Why do you need everybody else? If you're really so secure, all you've got to know is coming from inside of you. Why do you need everybody else? And why do you feel you have to like kill the witness or kill someone, kill literally or in other ways if they don't agree with you? That's just the first sign of someone that's not secure with themselves. So they have to get rid of anyone that has a different opinion. Or they have to diminish them. You see sometimes people who belittle others. There are people who bully, who intimidate. How is that coming from security? Secure people don't need that. Security comes from within. You're a secure person. I feel good with myself. I don't need to put you down. I am who I am. And so the other form that masquerades like self-love is actually really a very unhealthy person, an insecure person. And you could see it immediately from the symptoms. Anyone that needs to belittle or to intimidate or to dismiss others, you have to wonder why. So I know the argument will go, 1 second, the person is so confident and so convinced of their rightness, the other person is being immoral or wrong, and I need to put them in their place. So firstly, let's not talk now about matters of life and death. Obviously, if you're facing an enemy, someone's coming to kill you, you can't sit down in a philosophical discussion and saying who's right and who's humble. We're not talking about that. But you're talking about any other given situation. If indeed you're an intelligent person and you feel so strong about it, why does it have to be in an intimidating way? Why do you have to demoralize another person? Why would anyone have to demoralize and hurt another person in the name of their position? Even if you're right. That's why you have the expression, Divrei Chachamim benachas tishmaon. It means the words of the wise are said pleasantly. They're said calmly. You'll see people who have that inner confidence and inner strength and are actually knowledgeable. They don't need to persuade anyone. Now, everybody has their moments of passion, has their moments of getting excited about something. We're humans. But fundamentally, a person like that doesn't need to persuade. They can make their case pleasantly and, take it or leave it. It's not about winning. It's not about victory. It's not about conquering. But we live in a world of competition, and we live in a world of all kinds of different ways of what do we call it? Upmanship. Is that an expression? I'm losing my words today. Like showing up people by like putting people down and showing that you're greater than others. There's a word for it, like upstaging is the word, but there's another. There's like I'm sure that our Facebook audience, I'm sure, is commenting and telling us what the word is. But regardless, the idea is that you have to demonstrate that I'm bigger than you, I'm stronger than you are. It reminds me of one of the stories when the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Chabad Rebbe, was sitting at the Seder table. So we know there's the 15 steps of the Seder. So after you say Kaddish and Urchatz, Karpas, the fourth step is Yachatz. Yachatz is you break the middle matzah on the Seder plate, and one bigger part is put away later for the Afikomen, for Tzofan at the end of the Seder. And the custom is, at least in the community I grew up in, is that you measure that, you say that the larger part should be like 2/3 of the matzah and the other part. And then you break that into 5 parts. So someone sitting at the Seder table was measuring, like with, I don't know if he had a measuring rod or a ruler, but he was measuring which is the bigger piece. And the Tzemach Tzedek, with a smile, said, he said in Yiddish, "Hagodl was medaf messen is nicht kein Godel. It can Godel nicht." Someone that's great, something that's bigger that you need to measure, is not that big. In other words, if you need to measure it, it's not big. Someone that has to measure themselves by others and comparing and saying, "Listen, you want to know how big I am? Look how small everybody else is." That's a person that does not. That's not really a great person, because greatness comes, as I said, inner value comes from within, and it's essentially the experience of us sensing that inner inherent value that I was describing before. So the so-called the diametric opposite of healthy self-love is unhealthy. That masquerades like self-love, but it's actually in a form of arrogance or a form of putting down others. It has negative elements to it, which usually are indicators that there's something wrong. Now, can we have a combination? Of course we can have a combination. It's not necessarily black and white. But it's good to put things into contrast, into stark contrast, to be able to appreciate and understand the difference between these elements in a person. Now, when we talk about now regarding these two elements, the key that I wanted to address so far was really clarity. It's important to be able to identify what are these forces in our lives. So I'll sum up. We've identified like this, that each one of us, each one of you has inherent value, which should result in a healthy measure of self-respect, self-esteem, self-confidence, what we call self-love, that in turn is coupled with humility, with selflessness, and the ability to not just coexist with others, but also love others. Because someone who's very healthy in their own personal love, that person will also be very healthy in how they love others. Because they do not feel that if I give to you, I get less. You'll see people who are very secure, are very good, are big givers. Because they don't feel that by giving to someone else, they become diminished by the fact. Think of it like a flame. One flame lights another flame. The first flame doesn't get diminished. On the contrary, now it's spread and it can get stronger. When it comes to materialism, that's the materialism by definition means it's measured by volume, it's measured by quantity. So if I give you half of what I have half less. I give you half my food, I have half less food. I give you half my money, I have half less money. But that's based on the material look at life. So that, which means everything occupies time and space. So you're sitting in your chair, in your space. If you want to give me your chair, you have to get up from it. Two people can't occupy the same space. But when it comes to soul and spirituality, the rule changes completely. It's the opposite. Two people don't have to be in the same place. They could be millions of miles apart and they love each other entirely. And they don't measure things by how much they hoard and how much they hold on to. They measure things by how much they give. Because giving is the nature of a loving person. They share, they give because they don't feel diminished. People who are very insecure, people who do not feel that they have that self-value, what happens is they feel they have to hoard. I have to have more and more and more. For me to be bigger, I need more. And I need more than someone else, my neighbor has, or else maybe I'm not that special. So they're measuring it by basically by their possessions, but measuring it by their acquisitions, not measuring it by inner value. Which of course is a very real reality in our lives. Many people, simply because someone has more money, and because they have more money, people worship them and need them and so on. So you suddenly think someone has more money, sometimes they convince themselves they're more special, they're more valuable. They only have more money, they can buy more things, but there's no value to it fundamentally. You'll see people who are really, now everyone should be blessed with the wealth and prosperity, but we should never define ourselves like the talks I've given on the topic. Is your self-worth defined by your net worth? So if you're a person who values more what you do than who you are, which is unfortunately the case in this world, when most people are asked, who are you? They don't say, I'm an indispensable soul created in the divine image, and I have some type of contribution to make that no one else but I can contribute. They'll give you their business card. They'll tell you what they do. Because in this world of so-called careers and the world of accomplishments, what we value are always externals. And that includes money and acquisitions and equity and everything that can be counted, so to speak. People who have that inner self-love, yes, they should also be blessed, but they're not defined by what they do, and they're not defined by what they've acquired in life. And that's why poverty will not destroy them, and wealth won't corrupt them. People who don't have that inherent self-value, the awareness of their inherent self-value, money will always corrupt them. And poverty will destroy them because they measure themselves by what their impression is, what their appearance is like, what the world recognizes. Even though the fact is that nobody can take one penny with them to the next world, we don't think about that. We think about the here and now. So a loving person is by nature a giving person, because giving does not make them less. On the contrary, it makes them greater. I mentioned before, like the symphony, the orchestra. When you're playing music with others and the other one doesn't play the music, it's going to affect and compromise you. So you want them to play. You want them to be the best they can be, because then you can be the best you can be. Do we have such a spirit of cooperation and in the world, in the mood of the world? Often not, unfortunately. But people who have that inherent quality that I've been describing and aware of it, absolutely have that. And that's what it's in a way contagious and can go viral, because what they do is they project that type of positive energy of giving, of sharing, of moving things forward, of breathing. The opposite, the unhealthy form of self-love, what it does, it drains you and others. And you feel it, because it's a person who's going to be a user, a person who can become a parasite, a person who's more about me than anything else. Not because of the self-love, because they have a very distorted view of what their real value is. So it's interesting that you can see it in how they affect others. When you see yourself being drained, you see yourself feeling like not well, when someone else told you, it means that probably that person is projecting and trying to feed off of you, and that's coming from a person who is themselves not in the healthiest place in their own self-love and self-esteem. When you're around somebody who you feel a certain benevolence and a certain positive aura and energy, empowerment, then you can rest assured that person is in that place, because they're empowering you because they themselves have that type of force. Now, I'm sure you can identify in your life both types without mentioning names, not here to insult anyone. And obviously, it's always healthy to hang around as much as possible with the latter type, meaning those that have that. Which one was the latter? I forgot which one I spelled out first. With the people that have that love and have that positive energy, as opposed to the demoralizing energy. I remember when I was a kid, I don't know, very young, I was talking to somebody, I don't even remember who, I think he was an assistant teacher or something, and he said to me, I'll talk to you later, I have to go to a meeting. Now as a kid, this is the first time I ever heard of the meetings. I asked him, what's a meeting? So he wisely told me something which I appreciate till this day, a meeting. Children don't want meetings. You have to try to have a meeting with children. Say, okay, literally 2-year-old, we're going to have a meeting. Maybe you get their attention, and if you give them some incentive, you'll talk to them. But we have a meeting at 10 a.m., we're having a family meeting. So I asked him, what's a meeting? So he said to me, always remember this. I can't tell you what a meeting is, but I can tell you what it's supposed to be. A meeting either will drain you or will empower you. So when you go to a meeting, just wonder, at the end of the meeting, say, did I feel empowered or did I feel drained? And it works perfectly. Meetings we go to that are tedious, maybe you have to go, there's no choice, and people are just plapping away, everybody their thing, going nowhere. No tachlit, no purpose. Or as the Rebbe would say, a meeting, and then the meeting is we'll have another meeting, And then there's a meeting where you feel empowered. You feel there's solutions, proactive thinking. Here's a problem, let's tackle it. So some meetings are basically therapy for some individuals that just need to have people listen to them, or just feel like we're really discussing it, when really there's no discussion. I've been to both types of meetings. And I always smile to myself, because I remember what he said was very accurate. So I don't know what a meeting is, but the bottom line is what comes out of it. And there was one, I remember there was a board member on one of the synagogues in Manhattan, prominent synagogue. He says he was invited to the board. He was a wealthy businessman, so he became a new member in the board. First board meeting, he says, literally for 45 minutes was a discussion whether we should change the doorknobs in the shul. Now, he says, I was new, so I didn't want to say anything. After like 45 minutes, and I saw this is going to continue on, and the meeting is an hour meeting, what else, do we have anything else on the agenda? So he says, how much does it cost to change the doorknobs? $2,000, $3,000. He says, in that room, $3,000 was pocket change for every individual. So he says, you know what? I'm going to pay for the doorknobs. And everyone said, wow, they wanted to give me an award, he said. I said, no, but that's not my point. I want to move on with the meeting to other topics. And he says, they really didn't have any other topics. This was a meeting, this is a board, was busy talking about doorknobs. And then they can say, we had a productive meeting because we made a decision. Even better, we got someone to donate. But his only incentive was that, which is very true. It's a meeting, I'm just using meeting as an example. This could also be one-on-ones and so on. And you can tell. You can see people, you meet with them, you really feel, you go away uplifted, Uplifted. I mean, to me, that's a compliment when someone tells me I felt uplifted. Remember my literary agent telling me, every time I meet with you, I feel uplifted. And then he told me another name of someone. He says, every time I meet with him, I feel, I don't want to use the expletive that he said, but it was basically drained. Okay? So I hope all of us can be people that anyone that meets you feels uplifted, empowered, feels that things are more possible than you. They smile more after they meet you than before. And then there are other people, you go away, you smile less, and you feel more depressed or more resigned and more. Yeah. So the point is, this all is rooted in the inherent value of how you see yourself. And I'm not saying we should come up with this on our own. That's why the Torah, the Bible, begins with that statement. We're 2 weeks from Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah. Everyone told Rosh Hashanah, shuls will be filled. What do you think at the end of the day Rosh Hashanah is? Rosh Hashanah is the collective birthday of the human race. And how is it described? When you look in the book of Genesis, the first time the human being is described not as an intelligent creature, not as an emotional creature, not as a family man or woman, not as the 1,000 other ways you can describe people. You could say, talented, artistic, creative. Well, we have all kinds of words that we use. Torah, God says, I want to create a human being in my image. Tselem Elokim, divine image. B'tsamenu kidmusenu. And as I said, the Declaration of Independence, let's put it in more secular, universal terms, created by all people created equal and endowed by the Creator with inalienable rights. Why? Because everything starts from there. That's the essence of who we are. So Rosh Hashanah is not just the celebration of the intelligent creature called the Homo sapien, or the emotional creature, or the loving creature, or all the others. That's all our faculties, and very important faculties. But at the heart of it is that you are indispensable. That you come into this world, you are indispensable. You matter. And your actions matter. And you have to realize that's an inner value. Now, someone will say, well, I don't feel it. I don't feel it. What am I supposed to do? Well, arrogance takes on two shapes. It can take on the shape of bloated sense of self-worth. You're more important and you're pompous and all that. It could also take on another shape, saying, I'm nobody. I'm nobody. But who gave you a right to say you're nobody? You didn't create yourself. Your Creator tells you that you are somebody and you have inalienable rights and you're valuable. Who are you to say that? So arrogance can take on an inverted shape of being complete worthlessness. Worthlessness and low self-esteem is just as arrogant as somebody thinks they're the most important person on earth, because it's you deciding. It was not up to us to decide this. We were put in this earth as a gift. Life was a gift given to you. You don't own it. And you don't own and determine how valuable or not you are. Both ways. Not more than, not an overinflated version of it, and not an under one either. Underestimated. That there's an inherent value to who we are. They have the joke they tell about Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, whenever you can fit it into whatever you like. So a guy in the synagogue comes to shul, a simple guy, and he sees the rabbi is standing and the eyes up to heaven saying, I'm nobody, I'm nothing, I'm nobody, in the eyes of God. Okay. Then he sees the gabbai, what do we call the beadle? I don't know, the assistant rabbi in the synagogue, also saying, I'm nobody, I'm nothing, I'm nothing, I'm nothing. And then the simple person, following their lead, starts saying, I'm nobody, I'm nothing, I'm nothing. And the rabbi looks to the assistant rabbi and says, look who thinks he's nobody. They don't like that he was saying he's nobody. Because they felt they were somebody. Anyway, you get the joke, you get it, you don't. I'm trying to add laughter to the 14 times a day and see if we can do 14 times right here in the class. That would be an achievement. And then take it from there. So, my friends, it comes down to this, that we have this inherent sense of value that we should have. And the fact that some people don't like themselves is an aberration. It's an aberration. It would be like saying that you don't have the confidence in something you have total confidence in. People lose confidence. This is the key thing is to remember that just because you don't feel it doesn't mean it's not there. So the fact is we need sometimes to be told that this is the way it is. Children are born into this world. They did not create themselves. And the parents didn't create them either, because the parents are also one's children. We're put here. And having that sense of, I would say, humility and respect for the gift of life that you were given is the first and foremost thing to remember. Because if you don't have that, then you start deciding, so you could decide, you know what, I don't like myself. But you have no right to make that statement. Because the creator of this world likes you and put you here. So you're going to tell him and say, you know what, I don't agree with you. Who are you to say that you don't agree? You have no such power. And I'm not saying that in a way to insult anyone. It's just recognizing that there are things that are gifts of life that we need to respect and we need to honor the blessing of life. And that includes the blessing that, as we say every morning, which is like a mini Rosh Hashanah every morning, we say, Moda ani, I acknowledge to you, that you have returned to me my soul. So this is a first exercise that any one of us can do, and this is a strong suggestion I'm making, especially coming to the New Year and Rosh Hashanah, and that suggestion is that you want to start building, or I would say reclaiming your birthright. You have to do something about it. You can't just have a meditation and just talk about it or listen to what I'm saying. You have to implement something. So the first implementation is that every morning, whether you say this prayer or not, to say it with this intention. Every morning, as soon as you wake up, the custom is even before you wash your hands, before prayers, before anything. So that's a moment that everybody has a few seconds. Nobody has a business meeting the second day awake. Before you check your texts and so on, simply say a one-line statement, whether it's in Hebrew or whatever language that works for you. I thank you for returning my soul to me, for making me indispensable, for making me, giving me that inherent value, renewing my contract with you, and that I have the ability and your vote of confidence to accomplish something that only I can accomplish. A simple thank you. But that thank you, as we know today, gratitude has recently become very popular as a healing element, making people healthier. Gratitude, but it's also not just gratitude, it's also recognition of what you really are. You'll say, well, I'm not in the mood. We're not talking about moods now. If you're going to be up to your mood, then you're going to die with your mood and you live with your mood. We're trying to rise above our moods and rise above our self-perception, trying to reach something that is deeper. And sometimes to access that, you have to simply act on it. You know, people who have lost confidence, let's say an athlete has lost confidence in their tennis game, or in other areas of athletics, or sports, or achievement. And for that matter, anything. So because they lost confidence doesn't mean you've lost ability. So a good coach is going to kick in the pants and say, listen, let's get out on the court and start hitting. You say, I don't have confidence. You start hitting. Let's get back into a groove, get back to your, till you keep doing it, till what happens? It reawakens and recognizes, hey, yeah, you're right. I do have that talent and skill. Are we going to become subject to our own moods because we're in a bad mood? We're going to say, you know what? Undermine our own capacities. That's precisely why we need to have mentors, coaches, and we need to have an objective. That's why we have a Torah that tells you you're created in the divine image, whether you like it or not, or whether you know it or not, or whether you feel it or not. And Rosh Hashanah comes and reminds us that. Every year, that renewed. And every morning, we have, like I said, the mini Rosh Hashanah. And the same thing before we go to sleep. So like punctuate the day with these two bookmarks. At the end of with these two bookends, I should say. At the end of the day, instead of going to sleep with a newspaper on your nose or the television on or your mobile, maybe read something that's a little spiritual. Read it together with your spouse if you're married. Do something that enters the sleep in a peaceful way. Don't bring your whole day and all the aggravation of your day to that moment, because you're entering a pure space. And there's also a one-line prayer. It's called B'yotcha Afkeduchi. In your arms, in your hands, I entrust my soul. So literally, like you say in the morning, thank you for returning my soul. Now I am giving it back to you for the night. As the Kabbalists, the mystics explain, that the soul goes and is refreshed by spiritual waters, literally refreshed, like a spiritual spa. Our cells are regenerated, and we wake up in the morning. The mystery of sleep now is at least punctuated by two tremendous things. That before you went to sleep, you went with that attitude and saying and recognizing the humble attitude, I return my soul to you for your safekeeping. And you wake up in the morning, you acknowledge your soul. And if you do it with the right intention and really invest in it, what you will be is you will reawaken the inherent self-love and self-value that you really are, that you deserve, and that dignity. And then what will happen is, if you keep that focus, that throughout the day you will look for more such signposts. And you'll look for ways, because once we get into the workday and we get into the whole, on the merry-go-round, on the roller coaster, whatever ride you want to use as an example, sometimes we can forget. So it's good to remind ourselves as much as possible by our good deeds, by stopping and pausing when you're involved in something and over-immersed, and just being able to reignite that sense of feeling. Now this takes work. You do this properly, you condition yourself day after day, make this a habit, you'll see things will change. Because your attitude will change. You'll have a different way of looking. Instead of looking at yourself as defined by your day's activities, or defined by other people's opinions, or defined by other people's critique, or for that matter, compliment, it'll be defined by your soul that is returned every morning and on earth and returned back to God every evening. And that becomes your compass, and your driving force, your GPS, if you wish. So that changes things. Because, look, at the end of the day, we are either going to be influenced by others, or we're going to be influenced and by our inner selves, and in turn influence others. There's no real third option. You're either projecting and illuminating, or you're taking in other people's illumination and their impact on us. Now, especially when we live in a world, as I said before, where we didn't have really healthy role models, healthy, loving role models, it becomes increasingly important to be able to create a strong foundation and a strong beachhead, so to speak, where you begin to build the self-love. Because it's there inside of you, the inherent self, it's there, waiting for you to access it. Like a well, like an oil well. It's deep under the ground, you have to dig to access it and then draw it forth. That's exactly what we're talking about. So we're not talking about creating anything new, we're not talking about finding a new book or a new workshop or a new guru that was going to give you methods how to become happy or how to become self-confident and self-loving. You're talking about finding within yourself. Now, what a good mentor can do is help with objectivity, help with the focus, help with encouragement and support that's necessary in any endeavor, especially one of this nature. So what better time to begin as we are now in the last weeks of the month of Elul. Elul, by the way, is about love. I am to my beloved to me. So it's clearly about initiating love and receiving love, which, as I said, healthy love is exactly how it works. It's not a one-way street. Healthy love is always going to be expressed in giving. It's always going to be expressed in sharing. You'll see loving people, they do that. You ask parents, how could you stay up all night when you have a busy job tomorrow and the children are crying? A healthy parent will not even understand your question. Say, I don't understand what you're talking about. This is my child. People who do have a problem with it is because they're a consumer themselves. Now they'll say, listen, my children need me to make money, so I can't stay up. But maybe your children need you just to pay attention to them. So very often there are people working, and depriving their children of a little attention by saying, I'm going to give them security. And meanwhile, you deprive your children of security because you're busy building security, financial security. So it's about appreciating and understanding the priorities. And as I said, as we come to the last weeks of the month of Elul, is an excellent time to think about these things and to set our minds to it, and most important, in action. Now, I just gave some examples. I'm sure if you think about it, you'll find more ways to actualize this, more ways that we can actually use more tools and exercises that can help us actually access that self-love. Another example would be when you volunteer for things. When you volunteer to help others, whether it's needy, special children, or just anyone, that also brings out the confidence within you. You'll see it across the board. When people volunteer to help somebody, so initially you may resist because I have no time, I'm busy, blah, blah, etc., etc. But what happens is it brings out from you that giving dimension, which always goes hand in hand with your loving side. And in this sense, you can say by acting in a loving way, you end up what was the word? Activating the love within yourself, because as especially the mystics and the Hasidic masters explain, our inner faculties, just like a body has parts, and each part has to be nourished and nurtured. For example, you have calcium, and you have vitamins, and you need different nutrients to feed and nourish different parts of the body. So too, it is in the soul. The soul also has parts and faculties, and one of them is called love. Love isn't just an abstract thing. Love is an actual piece of your soul. I don't mean physical piece, spiritual piece. So the soul is also made up of parts, and when you act loving, you feed the love within you. And when you don't act loving, you deprive it. It's like you starve it. So the same thing is with all our other faculties. I'm focusing on the love. So acting loving in a kind way activates the chesed and feeds and nurtures and nourishes the chesed and love within you, which is why charity of all sorts, whether it's material, money charity, financial charity, or time or energy or volunteering, has such a powerful effect, because what it does is it actually activates, and it's like, think of it like exercising the muscle of love within you. So someone said, I'm a very loving person, but you never see them act on it. You know, they say about the guy that needed a heart transplant, and they said to him, you have a few options, which heart do you want? So he says, he saw on the other floor, he says they saw somebody dying, was a very, very wealthy man. He wants his heart. So they say, why his heart? He says, because he's never used it. It's completely new. It's fresh. So obviously this is somewhat of a humorous statement. He wanted a new heart. We know a healthy heart is one that's used well. It's like someone say, I'm not going to use my muscles. I don't want to hurt them, I want to keep it unused. Like many people, they buy a new couch and they just cover it up in so many layers. They say, it's new. I don't want to make it old. But some of the best things are when you use them. That's how the more you use them, the more conditioned they get. Just like good wine and other things of that nature. So in our own beings, we also have in our psyches these different forces and faculties. So people say, if I had love, I'd be loving. And the response to that would be, if you'd be loving, you'd have love. So sometimes it's your heart follows your investment. I remember years ago, met a big fundraising consultant, and he said to me, remember the rule. People think, mistakenly, that people's investment follows their heart. If you can get someone to be emotionally connected to your cause, they'll give you money. He says the other way around. Their heart follows their investment. He says when they first established the synagogue system in the United States, they wisely understood that they made a condition that if anybody wants to bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah a child, they need to be a member in the synagogue. And a member is $1,800, $1,200, whatever it was. He says, what was the point? These people never came to synagogue, but because they wanted to bar mitzvah their children, they became members. Once they became members, then they were the people that would end up writing the $1 million checks for the library, for additional wing, for the kitchen, etc. He says, because you get somebody to commit, even if it's a small commitment, people's heart follow their investment more than the investment follows the heart. And I thought about it, that's true. In Jewish thought, you have the concept of ha'maisa hu ikar. The bottom line is action. And action breeds action. Thoughts don't breed action. Speech doesn't breed action. It could lead to it, but action is a tangible reality. And that tangible reality, when you act on something, if you act on something you really want, that's the best way to get it. So to say, first let me be in the mood, and first let me set the stage and be in the right mindset, etc., good luck. The so-called shortcut to short-circuit the process is to be that way. So when people say, I feel low, I don't feel self-love, I don't feel self-esteem, well, when you behave in a way that's loving to others, what it does is it stimulates like a catalyst, and it gets and awakens that part of you. So it's another one of the tricks of the trade, so to speak, of how to achieve that, which explains why we say that like in this month of Elul, before the holidays, and even during the holidays, the 10 days of Tshuva between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, are special days of increasing in charity, increasing in prayer. We'll say the prayers next week begin the slichus that we begin Saturday night, not this week, next, and then every day after that. The Sephardim already do it throughout the whole month. Why do we do that? Someone say, I'm not in the mood yet. Come Rosh Hashanah, I'll try. Because the key thing is not always the mood. Do things and you'll become in the mood. When you give tzedakah, when you're not in the mood, that's the best way to become a kinder person. When you're in the mood, great, but when you're in the mood, there's no big achievement. You're in the mood of doing it. When you're not in the mood, and that's, like I said, the theme I was talking about earlier at length, is that there are times you need to be said, your life is valuable. That's not up for discussion. That's a given. What a good coach will tell an athlete, even as much as he's in a funk or has a low self-confidence, is the statement is, you can do it, period. The great sin of the scouts, of the Meraglim in the Torah was, Moses sent them to scout the land. They came back with a bad report. What was the sin? What was the bad thing? They did what they were told? No. They added something. They didn't come back and say, here's the situation, here's the lay of the land, as the Ramban writes, that they went to check out how to conquer the land and how to, if they have to fight to wage war. They made a conclusion. They said, we can't do it. And that was, they crossed a red line, a serious line. No one ever asked them whether we could do it. We asked you how to do it. It's not, we don't control the weather, not just the weather, but also the W-E-H-E-T-H-E-R. It's not whether we can or not. We for sure can. The question is how. And that's why, for example, God forbid, suicide, or any type of self-destructive behavior is unacceptable, period. It's a sin, actually. Because it's not your life. God gave you life and says, this is what I told you, I have my vote of confidence. You don't have a right to challenge that vote of confidence. You could figure out how to do it. You can pray that it should be done easily, shouldn't be with that many challenges. But you absolutely can, and you need to hear that. There are things that sometimes we have to be told that's how it is, because if we're left open, with one little door open, back door, we'll bring all our negative stuff and negative energy and say, maybe it's not really true. So comes Rosh Hashanah and comes these days and I said, this is what you have to do, and yes, stuck is a mitzvah, you have to do it. You say, well, I'll do it when I'm in the mood. That's not what we're talking about. You're doing it because this is the exercise that you need to do. It's like a mandatory exercise every day, and that's how you get your muscles flexed, and that's how you get yourself growing. So, my friends, how to love yourself unconditionally is really should be rephrased and say how to access your inherent value. And then naturally you will love yourself unconditionally, in a humble way and in a selfless way. And definitely not in the ways we talked about, in those negative ways. So when we say, Anila Deidi V'Deidi Li, it's a verse in the book of Song of Songs. And in contrast, it says, I am to my beloved to I. But then there's another verse that says, V'Deidi Li V'Ani Loi. My beloved is to me, and I am to him. And it's explained, what's the difference? The difference is who's initiating. Are you initiating? Or is God initiating? Or is your beloved initiating? So in the month of Nisan, Passover, there we say, Nigla le'em malcham malcham lochem HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'ga'olam, that God revealed himself, God took us out of Egypt on the wings of an eagle from above. So there it goes, our beloved initiated and lifted us, and then we reciprocate. But in this month it goes the exact opposite. It's up to us to initiate, because in many ways that's much deeper, because it's saying access the inherent value you have and show love. Initiate. Don't wait. I've shared this a few times, a very powerful thought that I heard from someone who heard it from my teacher, my Rebbe, from many years ago. He was explaining that there are three types of love. There's a love that when your beloved asks you to do something, even if it's inconvenient, you do it. You love them, that's what you do. There's a deeper love, that even if they don't ask you to do it, even if they don't ask you to do it, and they just allude to it, they hint to it, you don't make believe I didn't hear, you also do it. So it's deeper because you don't even hear explicitly, but you got the hint and you do it. And that's still not the deepest. What's the deepest type of love? The deepest type of love is you didn't hear, your beloved did not ask you, they didn't even hint or allude to it, but rather you anticipate what would your beloved enjoy. And without their expecting it, without requesting it, without hinting to it, you do it. That's the highest level of love, the highest level of commitment. And he explained that this is the difference between the written Torah, where clearly the laws that are stated, there are certain things, like example comes Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, these are written law Torahs, they're mitzvahs, they're holidays in the Torah, with guidelines, and guidelines include what we're supposed to do and the joy involved and so on, especially Sukkot. Then there's a deeper love. There's a deeper level. And that's the laws that are given to us by the rabbis. Nothing in the rabbinic edicts and laws exists without it being hidden somewhere, but remizah somewhere in the Torah. So it's only hidden. That's why chavivin alai, that's why it's even more precious, because the love that comes from that means not just explicit, you derived it from something that was hinted to. Like, for example, Simchas Beis HaShe'eva is an example, which is even a greater joy than the actual joy of the mitzvah of joy and Sukkot, because it's coming from something that was hinted to. And then there's even a higher level, the joy and the love that comes from things that the Jewish people throughout history initiated on their own. A minig Yisrael, a custom. Example, Simchas Torah. Simchas Torah doesn't say anywhere in the Torah. Not hinted to. I mean, there are some alluding to things, but it's not hinted to in any conventional sense. It's complete minig Yisrael. And when is the greatest dancing all year round? On Simchas Torah. Why? Because it's completely initiated by Anila Deidi from below. And that has a power that's far beyond any other power. Try it out in your marriage. Try it out in people you love. Initiate something they didn't expect. You'll always see there's a power to that that's greater than things that are expected and or hinted to. Because it's coming means that you went out of your way and you anticipated and you figured out what would give pleasure to somebody that I love. As a very different dimension. That is the one that exercises the deepest muscles of our heart, even more than the first two. The first two are also powerful, but that one takes on a new shape, and that's why, in a way, the Elul Anila Deidi, which comes before Tishrei, before the holidays, before the revelations, has a certain power because of its initiating. Like when we say in the morning, I mentioned before, Moda Ani, again, Ani, I acknowledge. It's again initiation. There's the power of initiating something on your own is the single most powerful thing. Think about it in school or in any type of work. If you challenge a student, if you give a student everything on a platter, and they may achieve something and they may learn something, but if you challenge a student, and not just a student in school, this can be a worker, this can be a coworker. If you challenge them in a way and say, I want you to come up with an idea, I want you to write a paper, I want you to initiate something, a completely different dimension of change in that person. As a matter of fact, it can change a person's life. The confidence it builds. Now, initially, many people will say, yeah, I can't do it, I don't know, what. But you push them, and you encourage them, and you show them that you're confident. You'll get the greatest things from people when you're able to initiate. Even today, you read a lot of the corporate motivational methods. One of the key things that everyone says constantly is get your workers, get your subordinates to initiate. Have a meeting, hear from them what they think, not just to make them feel good, because sometimes they'll say something that will be completely fresh and completely innovative that you would never imagine. Besides the fact that the empowerment that comes with that is also tremendous. Unfortunately, we live in a world where sometimes efficiency is so important, and it's so much more about control than about really getting people to really to stand on their own feet. Like the Mishnah in the Pirkei Avos says, "V'himidu talmidim harbe." So the question is asked. It should say, "V'chinchu v'lilmedu." Why it says to stand up, to raise up many students. It should say to educate students, to inspire students, to teach them, whatever the word is. But this himidu sounds like when it's just established, just to have a number game, like have a lot of students to show you have a large audience. Himidu means to make them stand on their own feet. It's the ultimate education, where you're not just teaching people information and data, but you're getting them to learn to initiate, which means even long after they leave the school and long after they're not in the presence of their teacher, you've taught them a methodology to solve problems, which is the greatest possible gift you can give someone. Because it means I haven't just given you information. I haven't just given you answers. I've given you the ability. Like say, I haven't just given you the fish. I taught you how to fish. The ability that whatever situation you're in, you'll know what to do. You'll be able to figure out. The confidence that builds and how it feeds into our inherent self-value, that is our divine birthright, is impossible to really describe. I've seen it with my own eyes. You see it with students in school. You see students who are either very down on themselves or demoralized, or they may even have some type of learning deficiency. Look at the pride that they have when somebody believes in them, when someone gives them the ability to initiate something. It may be small, but it came from them. That is the key to really building confidence. So to say I'm going to just enable you, you know what, I know you're not that, I'll just keep enabling you, it may be good sugar coating, it could be good sugar pills, but it's not empowerment. So to go back, to really develop that inner self-love and empowerment comes from that type of approach. Now there's a lot more to say, and I'll be saying things I'm sure in the coming weeks, but I think suffice it with this, that, and I hope I did justice to this theme, that each of you, everyone has that value, period. It's not even that's not up for negotiation. The fact that you feel or don't feel it is not going to change the reality. The key thing now is to figure out how, not whether, how. So God bless everybody using these powerful days in the month of Elul. The power of Anila Day, the I to my beloved, initiating, and then getting the response. That we should all have a very blessed Ksiva Chesima Teva and a blessed year materially and spiritually, and nachas from our children and those that need to find their soulmate, the shalom bayis, personal harmony, and as I said, success in all matters, from A to Z, what we say from Aleph to Tov, as we say in the Yom Kippur prayer, blessings that are encompassed in all the letters of the alphabet. We're here every Wednesday. And please, now that it's a Facebook, YouTube, so what do you say, like, share, email, all the different things that can be done, and please stay in touch with us any way we can help you in your self-loving journey and self-esteem journey. Don't hesitate to reach out. Everyone be well, so until next Wednesday, it's been an honor and a pleasure.